Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Thank you so much for joining. If this happens to be your very first time joining, welcome. I go live every single Monday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So, wherever you happen to be watching in the world, we appreciate you. And really, the whole goal of this show is to bring resources and information to you as the audience. Sometimes in life, we have these things that come up and we never, not never, but sometimes we don't know where to go, who can actually help us. And we all know, kind of in the mental health space, there's a lot of wait lists. There's a lot of times that you have to wait, and or maybe you go to one person and they can't help you, so then you have to go to another person. And this show is all about bringing you those resources, that information, so that you have it in your back pocket. And I am super excited because today I get the opportunity to bring back one of my guests who joined me when I very first started this show. It was merely a YouTube show. I didn't know what I was doing by any means. And well, I felt like I didn't really know. Maybe I still don't know. Who knows? But I had her on really early when I first started, and I'm excited to bring her back because I know with her nonprofit, they have been doing some incredible things, especially in the bullying space. And I don't know about you, but when I was in middle school, I hated that time of my life. It was just one of those, well, really sixth grade was like the worst time for me. I had the mean girls, and so it is really close to my heart. And I think about all of the people that have to experience bullying and how we don't often have the support that they really truly need. So, without further ado, I am going to bring up my guest, Dru. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Kelly.
Yay! Yes. And I am so excited to bring you back because Bowling Recovery Resource Center has done so much in between. I mean, it's been what, a year and a half almost the last time that I had you on the show. So
At
I
least.
know that there has been so much that has been happening. So tell the audience a little bit about your story, your journey, why you do what you do, and then we'll chat a little bit more too.
That sounds great. Um, well, I'm the executive director and the co-founder of Bowling Recovery Resource Center. Our mission is we defend bullied children and help rebuild lives. And how we started is out of experience. I think a lot of us founders, that's our story. My son was relentlessly bullied in middle school to the point where he was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and suicide ideation. He did try to take his life. Um, Through a course of events, a lot of reporting it, and being told over and over again that they were working on it, it was going to be taken care of, and it wasn't. We removed him from the school, and the short version is we filed a lawsuit and we settled the lawsuit. I can't talk much about the details other than during that whole process, we learned a whole lot about bullying, what it is, what it isn't, as well as one of the local news stations featured us on the news. And we started getting calls from people across the country because they put it on in different markets across the country. And with parents thinking that we knew what we were doing and how could we help them. And when we settled the lawsuit, we decided, let's see if we can help. And so that's where we started with Bowling Recovery Resource Center. And so we help empower families to hold the school responsible to stop bullying. We help families learn what bullying is, what it isn't, how to report it, why you use certain language when you report bullying, what the laws are, specifically in Colorado in regards to harassment and bullying. as well as disability law, all kinds of things. So we work individually. Our main work is we work individually with families one on one to get the bullying to stop and to empower that family and that child, to let them know they're not alone and they did nothing to deserve to be bullied. And, we're learning more and more each year. We hear back from the kids saying they, they didn't feel alone after all. And they knew that they were worth fighting for. So our goal is similar to yours, Kelly, is we're trying to reduce the adolescent suicide rate in Colorado. That's ultimately what we really want to do, is make sure those kids that are targeted for bullying know that they have an ally, that their parents are in it with them, that we're in it with them, and we're here to help. So we've also done some legislative work, as well as we're embarking on a lot more education in the next year too.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing your story again. And it is, like you said, it's one of those things that at first we have a story and we're not exactly sure what we're doing, but we know that we want to make a difference in the lives of others, because when you go through those experiences, you don't want another family to have to go through it.
Right.
And so that's how most nonprofits are created. But I love that you really help more in that, like, how do we have this conversation, like what is bullying and how can we help schools specifically, which we know that there's a lot of help that needs to happen in that space, because that's where our kids spend the most time as they're growing
Right.
up. And if we don't have that open communication, especially with the schools, with the parents, with the kids themselves, I mean, it's like you never know what's going to happen in the school setting. So, can you talk a little bit about like what is bullying
Mhm.
versus not bullying?
Um, yeah, so this is something that's really important. I'm going to read the definition because I think it does better than me kind of speaking off the cuff. So, according to stopbullying.gov, which I think is a really good resource for parents, for everybody, it's unwanted aggressive behavior among school age children that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. A one event can be bullying. A kid sticks another kid's head in the toilet. That's bullying. That's not playfulness. That's not teasing. But there's always three things. Well, yes, there's always three things. There's an imbalance of power, first and foremost. That could be size, it could be numbers, it could be intellect, it could be social status, financial status. Any of those can play into an imbalance of power. There's always an intent to harm. And the last one is there's a threat of further aggression. There's a likelihood it's going to happen again. And you and I both know that if it keeps happening, it gets worse and worse. Sometimes bullying starts behind a computer with cyberbullying, and then it can escalate from there, to verbal, to physical bullying. So the quicker it's identified, the quicker it's stopped, the quicker it's reported, the quicker that the school does something about it, the better for everybody, including the child who's participating in bullying acts. They have an opportunity to learn that what they're doing is really creating great harm for somebody else, and hopefully they can change their behavior, with some coaching and things like that. And there might be something going on with them too, which needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I mean, the society in general has changed so much over the years, right? Like you think back, I mean, when I was in school, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones. We had pagers by the time I was in high school, and that was like the coolest thing, right? But you could only page like a number and say hello or something. Oh, and my camera likes to turn off. It's fine. Um, so it's changed a lot, live TV, we're good. It's changed so much, the dynamic, especially when we talk about bullying, because now in the technology world, you can really hide behind a screen. You don't have to necessarily say something to somebody's face. And I know, at least when I was in school, there was a lot of fights that happened because you'd have to say it to their face, but you were also able to leave. I mean, you could leave
Mhm.
your bullies at school. Of course, when you came back, they were there, but you also have this dynamic now that there's nowhere to get away from it.
Right.
And that's so hard.
Yeah, yeah, there's no off button. I mean, I went through a little bullying, when I was pretty young at school, but 3 o'clock, it was over at least until 8 o'clock the next morning, and that reprieve was everything, right? I could go and just, as a young person, kinda gather my thoughts or whatever. I don't think I told my parents, which, 46% of bullying is not reported. Um, and there's lots of reasons why. So it's really important that the adults, that are in charge, kind of keep checking on it, and keeping their eyes open. We can't turn a blind eye to this stuff, and it
Yeah.
takes an adult to stop bullying those school age children. The kids can't. With that imbalance of power, it's not, you can't use conflict resolution with that. It has to be stopped.
Yeah. Well, and I know, I mean, so what popped into my head, and maybe I don't know, but what popped into my head was that I have heard in the past that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times the person who is bullying, sometimes they have something else that's going on, maybe in their lives, like whether it's abuse or learned behavior or something else that's kind of behind their behaviors. And that's the part I think that we don't talk about enough, is what's going on in their life
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
actually create them to bully others. And I know there is also that learned behavior portion of
Mm.
it too, but um what is the, I don't know if you know, but is there like a percentage that is more so like something's actually going on in their life versus the learned behavior?
Or learned behavior is, they might be, the target of somebody else's bullying, whether a family member, older sibling, somebody at church, a coach somewhere. So that's learned as well, right? So if I'm a child and I'm being tormented at my church group, and then I turn around and do that to somebody else, it's a learned behavior. Um, I don't know statistically, but generally speaking, children who engage in bullying behavior, there's something going on. Could be some trauma. They could be subject to abuse or bullying as well. So it's important, to support those children too, because they are children, right? And it's almost a disservice we do. We call it bullying with kids. Um, if I went over and hit you in the nose today, Kelly, you'd call the police on me, right? And there's a good chance that I'd be in trouble, and there would be something that would happen, with law enforcement. With kids, it's not like that. So, it's a different. We almost downplay it, and I understand that as kids, but it can be incredibly detrimental. And I know you probably know that it can cause lots of negative mental health consequences, especially as they go into adulthood.
Yeah. I mean, and there is, it's the I mean, if you talk about trauma or abuse, like when they're younger, right? Like
Mhm.
we all have heard and are learning even more now about how trauma really truly affects us when we're younger, and then
Yeah.
how it plays a factor as we get older. And it's a conversation that we don't, well, we didn't have in the past, but now we are talking about it more and learning more about it. And that goes along with bullying. I mean, it starts so young. I mean, my 8-year-old, we talk about it all the time now. And he mentions, I mean, I go in and I volunteer on Fridays, and I can see like the dynamics that are happening. And I'm not saying that there's like a right or wrong answer, but I think that schools specifically need to get better about how we handle situations. And I've just heard too many, and it gets, and I don't want to like go into the politics of
Right.
any of that, but I do think that it's an important conversation that we as parents are having with our kids so that they know that we're a safe place that they can come and talk to you about. But then also, how do we have that conversation with the schools? And I love that's where you all come in more specifically. And I know that you help um, across Colorado. So, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we discovered in COVID that we can we could certainly do our work across the state, with the Zoom, and so we can attend a lot of meetings. We can even attend the school meetings, school board meetings. There's times though that our advocates will go straight to the school, if it's out of town and advocate there. A lot of and some parents, we coach them and they don't want us there with them, and that's fine too. Sometimes that puts the school a little bit more at ease, and they might get further, without us being there. But yeah, we determined that we can certainly do our work across the state, and unfortunately, it's needed across the state. There's some very small towns we've been involved with this year that I didn't even I didn't even know these towns existed before this year, and it's a problem across the state, and so I'm glad we can help. And then this year as well, we are hoping to look at our current legislation around bullying in Colorado and to really either enhance it or add something to it. We have some good laws, but there's no teeth to them. So if a school does not adhere to what's recommended, there's really nothing that happens. So we really want to make it, ultimately we want to make it easier for the schools to do the right thing, to address bullying, to make sure that all the children in the school are safe. Schools are sometimes very reluctant to call anything bullying because it opens a whole liability. So they want to treat it and call it conflict, and you just can't use conflict resolution if it's bullying, because there again it's that imbalance of power. Now, if it's conflict, it's you. Here again, I'm going to use you and I as examples. Maybe we had opposite teams we were rooting for yesterday with the Super Bowl, right? Um, I'll give you the Chiefs, and oh no, you're a 49ers person, aren't you? Okay, Chiefs. So maybe we would get really heated about it, right? But you and I are equal, right? We're not. There's no imbalance of power there. In fact, we can get really hateful and kind of mean about it. But chances are we're going to solve it. Like, all right, we both have the right to our own opinions. I still like you, Kelly. Kelly can be like, yeah, you're okay, but we can move on. It's conflict. Yeah, but if it's bullying when there's an imbalance of power. So if I brought my whole family and the next door neighbors over and told you you're wrong. The 49ers, they're horrible. And it was an intent to harm. I'm really trying to harm you. I'm really trying to make you look bad. That's a difference. So if me and the family and the neighbors are all that can be bullying, right? But you and I having a disagreement about a football game, it's conflict. And if we can't solve it, probably someone else can come in and help coach us through it, especially with a child.
Yeah, and that's a good example to put out there, right? Like, and as adults, we are the rational part of our brain is developed so we can know that we can have conflict resolution, but we also have to think about youth is that especially when we're talking about bullying, because it's that moment is like really, really real for them, right? Like
Mm,
it's like the end of the world because people are mean. I mean, or
right.
kids can be so mean, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And there's going to be a point where there's this explosion, and or the unfortunate, like you talked about earlier, is that kids are taking their own life because they're
Mhm.
relentlessly bullied. And when you have so much trauma coming at you all the time, and there's nobody that's going to stand up for you or be an upstander, as you call them, it can be really, really traumatic and really, really hard. And I think that's across the board with adults and youth, but
Yeah, I think so too.
more so youth too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you and I are a little bit older, we might have a little more tools to work through something like that, or we have more trusted people in our lives that we can talk through something like that. But with a child, it's different. And if this has been going on for three months to an 8-year-old is a long time compared to 3 months in my life because I'm rather old. So
Yeah. No, and definitely, yeah, the time is gonna be so different too. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to a quick sponsored break, but once we get back from this, we'll just chat a little bit more about how you can help specifically if people are in Colorado, and then a little bit more about bullying and what that looks like and how we can help each other. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
What's going on, beautiful people? I'm Sean French, and I am the host of the Determined Society. Join us right here on Vitality TV every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for stories of grit, determination, and excellence right here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back. If you just happen to be joining us, thank you so much. I am talking with my amazing guest today, Dru, who is the executive director of Bullying Recovery Resource Center. And she is a returning guest from a while ago when I first started the show. And I'm just so excited to again bring you back because I know Bullying Recovery Resource Center has been doing some incredible things over the past year and a half since we chatted. And I mean, you and I chat all the time, but when you actually talk to the audience. But what we were talking about before we went to that quick sponsored break was what does it look like, bullying versus not bullying, but also conflict resolution versus actually labeling it bullying, and getting the schools involved, getting the people that are needed involved, especially to help our youth get through the transition, because the last thing that we want to happen is that they end up taking their life, which ultimately the services that you guys provide is helping us to eliminate or lower the number or statistics for suicide in youth also. And so I know you said that you work with schools, you work with the parents, you also have been doing political, that is not the right word, but
legislative.
policies,
Yeah,
legislative.
yeah.
Thank you. I was like, what's the word? So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So in 2021, we helped draft as well as get it, advocate for and get passed something called Jack and Kate's Law. It's named after two young people that did take their lives partially due to being bullied. One of them on the Western Slope and one of them in the Denver community. And Jack and Kate's Law has several components. One of them says that if bullying is reported, the school is required to investigate to an imbalance to see if there's an imbalance of power. There again, right? That's how we can define bullying if there's an imbalance of power. Um, Another thing, there is something called a Colorado model bullying policy, which is updated, I think, every 3 or 4 years. And it is now required that parents of bullied children sit on that um, the panel to help update it. So there is Actually, my husband sat on it as well as some other parents at the last one. And that's a great resource too for families as well as schools. There's sample forms of how to report bullying. Sometimes schools you have to fill out something. There's a definition of bullying. There's all kinds of great resources on there. I think it's very underutilized. And then uh, there's a third component, and I've lost it. um, Sorry.
That's
I
good.
think after 5 o'clock, sometimes my head goes to 50%. Um, so it's a great law, but like I said, it has no teeth. We're finding that schools don't even know it exists. So we're looking, hopefully this fall, or not this fall, this spring, on how to take what is in there to make it usable, to really make it easier for schools to do the right thing, to address bullying, to name it bullying if it is called bullying, what you do, um, to do the right thing, to take measures to stop it. um, and I do know from all the research I've done, there's not a one size fits all for every violation of bullying. So it's, there's not an automatic like suspension of a week or whatever. It kind of depends on what's going on. If the child is willing to make amends or change their ways, maybe it can be different. So, um, but there has to be some kind of consequence. So, and we talk a lot in our charity, as well as with schools and parents, about the policies and procedures schools have. If they do have a definition of bullying, of harassment, what the parent can expect, how to report it, what are possibly the consequences if it is determined to be bullying. And, um, usually with the FERPA law, parents are not going to find out. So if I reported bullying and the school actually does something, they're not going to tell me what they're going to do.
No.
Because that's a violation of FERPA. However, something needs to happen. And like I said, it can't be just a blanket, procedure that happens every time bullying happens. If it's a third infraction, it's going to be different than it's the first time or whatever.
Yeah, so what was popping into my head was there is a radio DJ who her son
Yeah.
was being bullied. And I know you know the story also, but she was very vocal about it. And she
Mhm.
was very vocal about the school not helping.
Yeah.
And I thought it was amazing that she used the platform that she was on to have these conversations, because I know you and I have talked about it. And oftentimes it is unfortunately swept under the rug because of like the red tape, right? Like they don't want to go through the red tape, or they don't want to ruffle the feathers. But I actually, just this last weekend, I trained some high schoolers, some seniors, in mental health first aid.
Yeah, I saw that.
And yeah, and one of the conversations that came up, actually one of the questions that was asked, because we were talking about how you asked the question about suicide, and they said, well, what if we ask them and they don't want help, do we still tell their parents, right? And
Mhm.
so if you're with your friend, and you ask them a question and they tell you that they are suicidal, and then they are like, well, do I tell their parents? And I told them, I was like, I am of the mind that I would much rather them be mad at me
Yes.
than not be alive. And that goes, I feel like the same that goes with bullying, right? Like I would rather somebody be mad at me than have them have to go through that and or choose to take their own life.
So you're saying if you were to witness, you're a child and witnessed a bullying act, and the child that was tormented didn't want to. Yes, I totally agree, and it's a good idea to go to the child who's been targeted and say, hey, I saw what happened. That's an upstander act, right? I saw what happened. It's not okay. I'll go with you to report it. And what if they, maybe they say no? They can still go report it. And that's a good idea. Hopefully the school does something. In my son's situation, there was a young man that did that, and he never told my son he did it. He actually brought his mom to school to report it, and it wasn't until after there was a news story done about us that he contacted my son and said, I went and told the school. I told him that you were telling the truth. And that I think that helped a lot my son's recovery. He knew somebody at that school had his back, even though if it wasn't real overt, it was he was there doing something. Um, and I'll tell you what, that stuff saves lives. Um, so I think I agree with you, just like, go report it anonymously. There's also Safe to Tell, where reporting can be done anonymously as well.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I know in Colorado we have the Safe to Tell,
Mhm.
and that is a great program that it can be anonymous reporting. I love that somebody, right, like went and told their parents, which their parents went and told the school. And I have had those conversations even with my son. And I said, if you witness somebody being bullied and or you need to tell me so that I can have a conversation with the school.
Mhm.
And I think it's also uh one thing that I train in the classes, especially in the youth, is that it can literally take one trusted adult
Yes,
that can save a child's life, right? And so,
absolutely.
and it doesn't have to necessarily be us as a parent, like it can be another trusted adult. But if there's one person, whether it's an adult or another youth, that would stand up for another person, like that's how we save lives, and that creates a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And the statistics are the same with bullying too. One trusted adult a child has, and it could be a teacher, it could be a paraprofessional, it could be the bus driver. Someone in their circle that is there for them. And generally it isn't mom and dad. But somebody else that that has their back, that's huge. And the likelihood of them taking their life goes way down.
And that's, I mean, that's the whole
Everything,
point
right?
of like what we're trying to accomplish.
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
So I know, I mean, it really stemmed from your experience that you unfortunately had to go through. You had to end up navigating the school system and navigating the legal world. And now that is really how you help families, but then also even taking it to the legislative space. Um, if there's some parent or teacher or, like you said, school bus driver or whomever's out there and they're just not sure what to say, how to help, do you have any like tips for that demographic?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. As parents, like I said earlier, like 46% of bullying does not get reported. And you and I can come up with the list. I mean, they're ashamed, they're afraid it's going to get worse. There's all kinds of things. It's something they don't want to talk about a lot of times. Um, so as parents, if we see some big changes going on with their kids, it's good to ask, right? It could be mental health, it could be bullying, it could be both. It could be a multitude of things. But if there's like a drop in grades real quickly, play dates are all dried up, they don't want to go to band anymore, they quit the soccer team, those big changes, those are a sign that something's going on. It's if a child does come to us and says, something's going on at school, we talk to our parents about it. It's really important to listen. I mean, you close down the computer, you turn off the phone, and you're there to just listen and let them know they did nothing wrong. And together you'll come up with an idea of how to help. And it's really important that the child be part of that. If they don't want to report it yet, you maybe respect that, right? All right. But if this continues, we have to do something. But there to really support and love them, and to listen and understand, and know that they're listened to. Um, so as parents, as teachers, and bus drivers, and working in lunchrooms, paraprofessionals, even parent volunteers like you, just kind of keep an eye on things. If you see something that doesn't feel right, or a child that's maybe off by themselves. It's, ask them, hey, what can I do for you? How are you? Open-ended questions are really a good idea versus like, how are you? That's not a good question. Fine. Talk to any 12-year-old. That's the answer you're going to get. My son was 12 when he was bullied, and it was, I found out more information from him in the car ride to and from school. So sometimes we took a really long route to get to or from school, because that's where he was more apt to open up, where he didn't have to look at me in the eye and just talk. Um, and I made mistakes as a parent. He told me he was called something 50 times a day, and I didn't believe him at first. I'm like, that can't be true. I think it was true. I think it was a lot worse. And the other thing we talk to parents about too, a lot of times a child will like tell you things in little eyedroppers. It's so my son. It was originally that he was called names. It was just a little bit. Well, yeah, I these physical things happened. Well, yeah, and it wasn't until we went all the way through depositions with the lawsuit that we found out it was like an everyday event, a physical event that happened to him. And I think that was the thing he never wanted to tell us, right? Because it was so shameful for him. So, we kind of instruct our parents that, if you're hearing this much, unfortunately, it's probably this much. Um, and just, and not freak out. My inclination was like, I'm going to go kick some butt, right? And, being calm and collected and really listening and getting buy-in from the child about what our next steps are going to be is really, really important to move through it together, and let them, they need to know that you're there the whole time. And we talk about, you gotta have to put on like a superhero cape. You've got to show up and, and be that strong, wise, powerful parent that's going to have your arm around them, and, and fight for them.
Yeah, I have like a couple things popping in my head as you were talking, because I also know like the flip side coming from like teacher perspective.
Mhm.
Like my mom was a teacher, and although a long time ago, um, and I have talked to her a couple of times, and she came with the knowledge of like you're one person with these 25 kids, so it makes it a little bit harder to notice things,
Mhm.
and oftentimes it gets put on the back burner because you're still focused on other things, and you still have to control like all of them versus one of them.
Yeah.
But I think like what you just said as far as parent, right? Like it's these small snippets that you're getting. And sometimes, I mean, I'm guilty of it too, is like, is that really happening? Like I don't know what is real and what's not real, or and so listening for those small little things. And then I know that I try to have more open conversations, especially with my son, and say, if you are, and I specifically, I try to be as clear as possible, because our brain loves clarity no matter what age we're at.
It's
And I
true.
say, if you're being bullied or you see anybody being bullied, we need to talk about it, and I want you to tell me. And I am very open with the conversations that I have around my son. I don't know that all parents are of the mind. I mean, he knows what I do for my job, and he can regurgitate it about the nonprofit, which is great. But I don't, again, bullying is one of those not hard conversations, but it kind of is in a way, because like you said, kids don't want to get in trouble first and foremost, and maybe they feel like they're going to, but then also they probably don't want to upset you, and they also are not sure
Right.
how to tell somebody. So,
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of shame. I'm supposed to be a boy and handle this, or whatever that dynamic is. It's tough. It's tough. And there's something that popped in my head while you were talking too. Um, and I just lost it again. I'm so sorry, but yeah, absolutely right though. What you were saying. And I think those open conversations, it is hard to talk about bullying. And, I'll tell you what, it was not anywhere even in our orbit before my son, what happened to him. And we really didn't think anything like that could happen. We were at a school where we thought it couldn't happen.
Mm.
And I'm here to tell you it can happen at any school. I think the real test is how a school deals with it. Because even at the very best schools, it's going to happen. Even if the parent or the student teacher ratio is, really low, it still can happen. And we call a child who is being bullied a target versus a victim.
Mm.
Just gives them, it's more power. And but I think it's a good descriptor too, because a bully does target it. They select who they're going to go bully. They just don't do it at random. They are going to pick somebody that, and just like you said with your mom, right, with 25 kids in the class, the kid that's really adept at bullying behavior is going to make sure that teacher's back is turned. That's going to happen in the corner of the classroom that she'll never see. um, so it's, there's a lot of ways that it happens.
Yeah.
So
And it's hard. I mean, not hard, but um I also just thought there was like one day I went in and had lunch with my son, and I saw kind of how, even because in their school they have to pick a seat and they can't move once they pick that seat during lunch, and which is another interesting dynamic, but whole nother conversation. But I saw like certain kids like picked certain tables, and then there was one that he's like, "Hey," he's like, "come sit with me." And I felt so bad. Like at that moment, like I was going to get up and go sit with
yeah,
him. Like I just was like, "Oh my gosh," like my heart, there was some others that went and finally sat with him, but it was
right.
like the last table that people went to. And I know it's elementary school, and there's like they have their certain rules around policies and whatnot, but I just like, I'm like, "What?" Somebody go sit with them. And then like finally somebody did, and I was just like, "Oh yay." But it's like certain things like that that affect kids in a
Yes,
way, like when you're not picked or nobody sits with you at lunch, or and that's what I try to instill. And I think it goes back to like, how, what are we doing as parents? Like, I'm not going to say I'm perfect by any means, but how are we letting them know and showing them the actions of being kind
yes.
and helping others and being an upstander versus just watching, right?
Mhm.
So, I think that plays a huge role. And what you had said brought up when I talk about in my classes is the swan on the pond. And I know you've taken one of my classes, but it's like the cool, calm, collected, having the conversations, but then underneath you, like freaking out, freaking out. And that's okay. Like, if we're
Yeah,
like, I have no idea what I'm going to say, I have no idea what's going to happen, I'm going to go storm into that school and like take out some people. But then you're like, whoa, 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 dial it back. Like, I got to be that cool, calm, collected swan on the pond, because I
mhm,
need to not also be the bully, right?
right. Yes, and schools are known to trespass parents too.
Mm.
So if a parent goes in and raises their voice or things like that, we've had more than a few families where the parents have been trespassed from campus, which is heartbreaking. Sometimes their child is earning awards and, featured in the play or whatever, and they can't go see them. So, um, yeah, calm, cool, collected is, it's a better way to go
Yeah.
always.
Just think about the swan on the pond. You gotta be
I
cool,
like that.
calm, collected. Yeah. Um, so I would love for you to share how people, well, first and foremost, before you do that, um, there is, and I also want you to share a little bit, like, there is hope out there, right? There is places, there's resources like you that people can go to. And you talked about the coaching aspect of coaching parents, and then also coaching youth, and or helping like with mentorship. You also have advocates that can help. So if you're in that place, Dru and her team can help. But will you talk about that a little bit before you go into how they can find you?
Absolutely. So, yeah, so we're here to answer questions, to help coach. We're here to listen, and it's not a one size fits all for every family, and it depends on the family too. Sometimes, families call, they just need information, or are we doing the right thing, or what should we expect next? We can help talk through that. I had a question asked today of how long do we stay with a family? It can be one phone call all the way up through several years, depending on what's best for the child. Is it best to report it, to keep reporting it? Is it best to ask for a safety plan? Is it best to remove the child from the school? Unfortunately, it's usually up to the family with the child who's being targeted to do something. So sometimes the child goes to a different school, or even a different district, or goes to homeschool. It just depends. Um, so yeah, we're here to answer questions. Our website is a great resource. We have a lot of things that can help answer those questions on the website, as well as there's a litany of blogs that are on all different kinds of topics around bullying, including like gaslighting. There you go. Yes, gaslighting and teacher bullying, and bullying in the LGBTQ plus community or the ASD community, and how things look a little different, and why those certain segments of our population are more targeted than others, especially with kiddos. um, so it's a great resource for parents, but we answer the phone after hours, and we're here to help. That we also, on the website, there's a form that parents can fill out, and we will contact you that way as well.
Amazing. And I'm going to put up a QR code too so that you can scan. I'm all up here, up here. To go. Yeah, I'm all which way?
I'm
I
going
don't
the wrong
know.
way.
Yeah. So you can scan the QR code that will take you directly to the website, or it's right below here. We know it's a little bit long, so that's why we can scan to go. But just again, keep it bullying recovery resource center. They want to help in recovering from being bullied, and they have all the resources in the center. So if that is helpful in remembering, or BRRC, and anything else that you want to share before we jump off.
Well, we are having an event in early March. It's our Top Golf event, and it's Take a Swing at Bowling. It's our second one. The last one was so much fun. So it's 3 hours of fun. We'll feed you. You'll learn a little bit more about us, but mostly it's to have fun, and just and help support Bowling Recovery Resource Center. So if you're interested in that, the tickets are available on our website. You can find it. And we would love to see you.
Amazing. And I haven't told you yet, but I will be there. I might have
Yes.
told you a while ago. Yeah. So I was gonna let you know. The other thing is that Dru and myself and some other nonprofits this summer, we are actually all coming together to do a health and wellness fair, concert, coolness. I don't know. We'll get more detail out about that. But I love how we have made this connection, and been able to really like cross collaborate. And I mean, all the work that you are doing with Bullying Recovery Resource Center is so important. And being that advocate and being able to help people through this process is just huge, because it is something that is and or can be really, really challenging to navigate. And there's all the feels, especially when it's your kid.
Yeah.
And so having somebody have your back and be able to guide you through the process is just ginormous.
Oh, and I did. So I am going to, you asked about hope, right? So there is hope. Absolutely. So I'm going to start with my kid that was bullied. He's now in college. We did get him some help. We removed him from the school, placed him in a different school that turned out to be a very good solution for him. Took him a while to trust adults. Took him a while to really come around, like a couple years. We got him mental health help. We actually got the whole family mental health help. as well as he started doing some volunteer work. He volunteered at taking care of some animals, as well as he was an assistant camp counselor. And I think that, and we recommend that to our families too. It's a great way for children to help heal if they're doing something to help somebody else. And so, we recommend that a lot, and mental health almost all the time with our families. If a child is exhibiting anything where they are exhibiting anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, it's, and you and I both know there's a lot of mental health resources out there, especially for our young people. So we're very passionate about them getting the help they need. But my son is 20 years old, and he leads a pretty normal 20-year-old life. He's a junior in college. He's going to graduate next year. He's got plans for after. So there is recovery, there's healing. One of our students we helped last year is a freshman in college back east, and sent us pictures not too long ago of her on the college campus, and she's living her best life. But she said it took a while. To trust, some other students and the adults in her world, but she's working through. So there is hope.
Amazing. And thank you for sharing those stories. And thank you for coming back on my show. I'm so excited that you were able to join me. So thank you so much. Again, there's the QR code if you want to get to their website, you need some help, resources, support inside Colorado or outside Colorado. Feel free to reach out and share with anybody that you think might need this information. So thank you so much, Dru. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you, Kelli.
Yay. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. I'm telling you, if you need information, if you need resources, if you need to have that conversation, whether it is for your child, for a child that maybe you're a teacher, maybe you are a bus driver, maybe you are in a youth's life, and you need help, you need support, you need to know, how do I even have this conversation? Dru and everybody that is part of Bullying Resource Recovery Center are just incredible humans that are here to help. So I know that this conversation is such an important conversation, talking about bullying, talking about mental health, and all the things that we talk about on this show. It is not your typical show, but it is definitely one that we have those hard conversations. And that's what it's all about, is bringing you resources, information, hard conversations, and sharing with you as the audience some tools and information that you can utilize in your lives. So whatever you happen to be doing, thank you so much for joining, and join me back next Monday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'll see you then.